will give 1 more minute for people to join, and we'll start very soon. Right, I think we can get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar about research opportunities in disaster resilient societies under the Horizon Europe funding program. I'm Alexis Gizikis, project manager at EENA, and I will be hosting this webinar. Today, we will explore the Horizon Europe program and particularly the Disaster Resilient Societies Destination, or in short, DRS. DRS aims to reduce losses from disasters by enhancing risk reduction based on preventive actions, societal preparedness, and improved risk management. Our speaker will cover the DRS topics and introduce opportunities for participation in these research activities. And together with me today is Philippe Quevauvilliers, who is a research programming and policy officer at the European Commission. Philippe has a research and scientific background, and he's currently responsible for research programming in the area of disaster resilient societies. He has also been coordinating the development of a community of users on security research called CERIS, which stands for the Community for European Research and Innovation for Security. And last but not least, Philippe is also an excellent musician. So we are ready to start. Just a few notes before I hand over to Philippe. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the EENA website very soon. There will be some time for questions and answers after the presentation, but in the meantime, please don't hesitate to write your question in the Q&A or the chat panels, and I will address the questions to Philippe later on. Also, translated captions are also available, and you can find instructions on how to turn them on your screens. And I think this is the introduction. Without any further delay, I will hand over to Philippe now. Philippe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alexis. Hello, everybody. Well, I would have preferred to see you in person because it's always delicate to speak to a screen. You know, it's the emotions are not the same. So I will be anyway happy to guide you a little bit into the disaster resilient society part of the cluster 3, and I will now try to share my screen. Let me see. I succeeded earlier, so I hope it will be okay. Is it okay, Alexis?
We see the slides, Philippe, now, yes.
Okay, so here.
Yes, we see the slides changing.
Very good. Okay,
it's working.
Perfect. Okay, so I will give you a kind of snapshot of different aspects of the disaster resilient societies with examples of projects and speaking about the topics that will be published in 2024 and speaking about CERIS as well, and while giving you some insight into what we are doing. But first of all, I would like to just remind a little bit, recall where we are standing regarding the cluster 3 research programming, which is composed of 5 main destinations. That is, one is dealing with fight against crime and terrorism. One is disaster resilient societies. This is the area which I'm coordinating. Another one is on critical infrastructure protection. border management and customs, and one horizontal thematic area, which is called strengthening innovation uptake, the SSRI thematic area. It is complemented by cybersecurity, which is covered by Cluster 3, but which is managed by DG Connect. So I will not speak about this, and I will focus today on the disaster resilient society part of the program. Well, there are many different impacts which are expected from this thematic area, and in particular to exploit the scientific results and ensure that they are contributing to the understanding of high impact hazards, trying to enhance the understanding, improve knowledge and situational awareness of disaster risk by citizens. Here, there is a very strong push for empowering citizens to act and be involved in research, which is not that easy. More efficient cross-sectorial, cross-discipline, cross-border coordination of disaster risk management and governance. As well, we are trying to push for enhanced collaboration and networking between the scientific community, research and program, and first and second responders through actions that are fostering a faster transfer of results. More technology side actually are the strengthened capacities of first responders in all operational phases that are related to their operation in the case of natural and human-made disasters. And finally, improved ability to rescue and manage the first phase of emergencies, taking into account extreme climate events and geological hazards. I will give you some examples of projects which are currently funded in this different area. It will not be exhaustive. It will be meant to simply give you a kind of horizon of the research that we are funding. But first of all, I would like to, I have two slides that are aimed to simplify the complexity. By simplifying the complexity, I mean, it took me quite a lot of time to understand in which I would say circle I've been asked that I've been asked to coordinate. And first of all, the question about ensuring links among different policies, different networks, different actors involved in disaster resilience and disaster risk management, from upstream, that is research, to downstream practitioners. Written like that, it seems to be quite simple, but in fact, we are facing difficulties to address different sectors: policy, research, industry, SME, practitioners, civil society, and I would like to add local and regional authorities to this. We have different kind of policies, which are from the United Nations, EU policies, and national policies that are dealing with different type of threats, which can be natural or human-made, and something which is called the UN Sendai Framework for Action that you certainly know very well, which is about disaster risk reduction, which is an umbrella that is actually not binding, but which is issuing recommendations that have been signed by the member states, including the member states of the European Union, and in principle implemented in the form of actions which are related to the Union Civil Protection Mechanism. And here, I would like to stress that at this level, there are some dialogue which are taking place between science policy practitioners via what is called the Union Civil Protection Knowledge Network. And I will come back to this because it's important to understand a little bit this landscape to make you also be aware of who are the main actors. So here we are speaking about natural hazards, we are speaking about man-induced risk, and a certain number of policies. And under natural hazards, well, we have the EU adaptation strategy, which is itself related to different binding regulations. The Water Framework Directive that is dealing with drought, for example, extreme drought. It's part of the Water Framework Directive. The Flood Directive, which is dealing with flood risk, including flash floods. Marine strategies that will be looking at pollution at sea or even stormy events. We have so these are directives. I mean, they have been adopted by the Council and Parliament and transposed into national law. They are binding by law, so they are Here we have an action where when we are funding research, it is implementing something which is well in place at EU level. We have other type of issues which are related to health threats, cross-border threats to health, for example, in the form of decision. Here, it's not a binding regulation, so it's issuing recommendations and coordination, but each member state have actually the sovereignty, the I would say it's a regular character regarding their own health policies. It's the same for CBRN, security and protection of public spaces. We have recommendations that are being issued by DG Home in this case, but it's not binding by law because it concerns sectors which are under the sovereignty of the states. When we are speaking about directive, for example, Seveso 3, which is about industrial accidents, we are again coming into the binding character. Here there is a directive which is regulating issues related to industrial accidents, which have to be implemented by the different member states. It's the same now for the protection of critical infrastructure, the so-called CER directive, Critical Entity Resilience Directive, which is now binding by law. So it's just to let you know that in some cases, the research will be confronted to situations where it will either be well considered by member states because it is in support of implementation of EU regulation, or considered, as a kind of recommendations, but not necessarily corresponding to things which are related to their doctrine, security doctrine. And this is part. So when speaking about this, we have a certain number of research and innovation activities, different programs funded under Horizon Europe, different clusters. We are trying to have a joint communication, critical mass synergies among different projects. And there are also capacity building projects, and I will come back to this in the next slide. We have also networks and clusters which are being built, networks of practitioners trying to help first responders, for example, to get access to research results and to try to help us to better identify the gaps that are still needed in terms of research. So these networks and projects we try to make our best to make them very close to the market and to have links with industry SMEs, looking at standardization when it's needed, and to try to ensure that tools, prototypes are actually finding their way to the market. And in the case of DRS, we are speaking here about different areas, and I will come back to this: societal resilience, disaster risk management, standardization, and technologies for first responders. Just to confuse you a little bit more, I would like to say that here, if I resume a little bit who are the main actors, I see the policies, the capacity building and research, the networking which are in place, the member states and associated countries that are actually the users actually of the research, our research, and the national and regional local levels. And if I come back to UN Sendai Framework for Action, here you see that this entity, which is United Nations, has a link with what is called ESTAG, which is European Scientific and Technology Advisory Group, which is composed of scientists, academics, providing research recommendations to the UN DRR implementers of the Sendai Framework for Action. So we try to have a dialogue with them because as soon as they are identifying research gaps that are needed in support of the Sendai Framework for Action, we might indeed intervene. And in many of the DRS topics, there is a link to the Sendai. And we have also a way to access member states and associated countries through the disaster risk reduction national platforms. And here, what is interesting is that they are implementing in principle the recommendations of the Sendai Framework for Action at regional level sometimes, but they don't have so much links with the research project. So just to let you know that we have this kind of entities that we would like to approach a little bit more. There are some very strong links with national disaster risk reduction strategies and networking, and a link to resident cities, local strategies, NGOs, citizens. Well, the links would be absolutely excellent. It would pass straight from this, I would say, convention policy, international policy, to the national and local level. But in fact, while we have EU, which is interacting and implementing the different policies through DG ECO, I mentioned the Union Civil Protection Mechanism, which has a role of coordination of, I would say, operational support by member states in case of disasters. The rescue is capacities which are actually taken, offered by the member states, which are established and I would say given at the disposal of DG ECO when there are disasters. And here you see that in terms of capacity building, DG ECO is funding capacity building projects which are related to this actually response prevention capacities. Many of them are involving first responders. There is a network which is called the Union Civil Protection Knowledge Network, gathering practitioners, scientists, and policymakers. And the link, formal link with the member states regarding this policy is a Civil Protection Committee. That is here, member states representatives discussing the implementation of the Union Civil Protection Mechanism. Horizon Europe is covering different, I will come back to this, different type of thematic clusters. And they have also, each of the clusters have a program committee represented by member states. But these people are not the same. You know, the Civil Protection Committee, the DRR National Platform, and program committees, they are member states representatives, but they are not necessarily speaking or coordinating their actions in their member states. Well, when we speak here about different DGs, you know, on food and agriculture, DG Agri, DG Environment on natural hazard Seveso, DG ERA about health, DG Climate. There are some clusters which are looking at different thematic areas, the thematic research, cluster 1 on medical research, cluster 2, which is more about societal aspects, you know, the social science, cluster 5, which is more related to climate issues, and cluster 6 about food and agriculture. So in this case, we have links to the Horizon Europe. And when we speak here about DG Home, it's even more complex because we are speaking about a critical entity directive which is in place. DG Connect have also a directive called NIS2 that you certainly know, which is also binding. With capacity building program, you see ISF, which is not research, but support to capacity, and in charge of cluster 3. I just mentioned this cluster 3. DG Connect is also engaged in cluster 4 with spatial technologies, and we are also in links with the European Defence Fund. So the dual use military civil is covered by DG Defis. It's where the CERIS, I will come back to this later, takes place. In relation to the cluster 3, we have this platform of exchange which try to gather many different actors of this very complex figure and try to see how we can guide actually the users into this landscape, which is not that easy. Having said that, I hope I did not lose you completely. I will give you some examples. Well, I forgot standardization and international cooperation. I will now guide you into examples of projects which are covered by societal resilience, disaster risk governance, technologies for first and second responders, and standardization. As you certainly know, there are different types of projects, research and innovation actions, which are developing tools, technologies, methods, whatever, at a TRL, which are very often from 5 to 5, 6, 7, you know, the technological readiness level, which are not yet close to the market. Innovation actions, which are very often strengthening project output in such a way that we are validating or demonstrating existing technologies that have been developed by research and reaching a higher TRL, so being closer to the market, and support actions, which, for example, networks of practitioners are part of them. Well, I will pass very quickly because it's not the aim of describing all the projects, but very quickly, projects which are dealing with the different sub-thematic areas. If you wish to have a larger snapshot of projects which are ongoing and which under the different topics, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I will send you much more information that I have here. Here, I took the example of Risk Pack, which is looking at the mutual understanding to enhance communication to the public. Typically, a societal resilience topic where we want to really put in all together the civil protection authority with the citizens and trying to see how they are aligned or not regarding their perceptions of risk, and trying to better understand the citizen expectations. So this is very closer to the citizen dimension. Engage, well, Alexis will know that very, very well. He has been engaged into this, engage. It's really looking at understanding societal resilience, identifying solutions, supporting formal actors in interacting with the population, and validating the results. Here again is how to link the citizen situations with those who are taking who are taking the actions in the field, and how to involve the population in interacting with, for example, the first responders and emergency services. Mediate is also one project which is falling under societal resilience. So here it's about multi-hazards and risk-informed system for enhancing the local and regional disaster risk management. Here the aim is really to try to help the local regional authorities to have a better decision-making regarding the different stakeholders' involvement. And this is really trying to link again, these local governments, businesses, and citizens. These are soft, actually. There is no heavy technology behind, but these are clearly some development that are needed to be closer to the local level and citizen. Paratus is another example on promoting disaster preparedness and resilience and manage a systemic risk of compounding disasters. Here you see this platform which is being developing, looking at different risk scenarios and about multi-hazards impact and so on. And here again, we have different type of stakeholders: industry partners, university, NGOs, and local and regional authorities. It is giving the accent of what we are trying to push in societal resilience. If we look at C2 in press, this is again about improving understanding and awareness of multi-hazard risk for disaster resilient society. And again, you see putting a consortium which is multi-actors involving the first responders, having research and academia, local authorities, citizens, and industry being represented, and looking at different type of hazards, flood, heat waves, wildfire, to try to have a kind of, I would say, shared understanding of the risk and be ensure that the population is better prepared. This one is proactive. It's a little bit more, I would say, specific, because it is looking at the CERIS threats, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive threats, through common approaching between security practitioners and vulnerable civil society. Here, the interest of this program is that they have developed some tools and technologies to, again, inform the population about cyber and threats, but they did a lot of demonstration that were simulating different type of cyber and accidents. It could be industrial accidents or a terrorist attack, involving people, volunteers that participated in the demo. Here in this case, it's the first time I saw projects which were involving not only the technological part, trying to extinguish, for example, fire, or to manage explosive threats and so on, with volunteers that were there to simulate, in fact, a real case incident. When we speak about medical issues, well, Nightingale is a project which is dealing with a toolkit for emergency medical responses. And here we are speaking more about the triage of victims, an intelligent system to enhance the situational awareness and operational capacities of emergency needs. Here, it's really a much larger multi-agency collaboration that is in place, which is ongoing, to upgrade the pre-hospital life support and triage. So we are here focused really on medical aid. PathoCert is another type of project which is also related to medical issues, that is dealing with pathogen contamination emergency response technologies. But here we are speaking more about an event, for example, that happens during a flash flood, or that will contaminate an urban area, for example. How to deal with this kind of alerts, assess the threat, and try to take decisions very quickly about the pathogen contamination and the action that needs to be taken by the emergency services. And finally, well, I wanted to show you this project which is starting, which is called the Go Beyond project, which is looking at risk knowledge, preparedness, detection, monitoring, warning about different type of natural hazards. And it came from another project which was called Anywhere, that developed forecasting impact system that is really to ensure that impact are well identified 12 or even 24 hours before the event. And they have tested this, it was based on radar, and now they will extend this to satellite information to ensure that we have the information in time so that we can evacuate the population. And it worked very well in the southeast of France, in Barcelona as well, in Corsica, and in Piemonte, where the system was tested and showed the efficiency for anticipating the events, for example, a terrible flash flood or a risk of landslide and so on. It has to be, I would say, trusted, because this information was, for example, delivered to Belgian local authorities and Luxembourg and German when in July 2021 for the flash flood, but they did not really believe that it would be so severe in terms of events, and they were actually quite. It was quite dramatic, because the populations were not evacuated in time, and when the event arrived, there were a lot of casualty for the time being. So here we are really in a situation that if we have a proper impact forecasting, it will be obviously serving the need for emergency services and save lives. Team up, no, this is about medical first responders, to try to help actually to the first responders to manage stressful situation with mixed reality training system. And here there are different scenarios, and they try to help medical first responders to learn more about what could be their reaction, what could be the risk regarding their own actually personal risk. So there are some technologies which are tested in real time. Team Up is a starting project as well. It's related to CBRN as well. It's really to upskill first responders and response regarding CBRN risk. There is a strong legacy about CBRN research, and here they are trying really to develop tools that will help the first responders in terms of triage of victims, but also decontamination. I will pass this. I will just link to this team up, including is networks of practitioners that really aim to check in practice what would happen, for example, in the case of a radiological or explosive threat. And they did demonstration, for example, in Kazakhstan last May, where radiological attack was simulated with a drone, and where volunteers, they were not contaminated, but they played this into bracket. It was really a case of simulated attack where there was a transport by ambulance to the Gemelli hospital in Rome, where they were decontaminated, treated, and a triage was occurred between the different categories of wounded people. So it was really quite interesting because there were different type of actors that were involved, and here the first responders were really at the heart of the system. I speak here about the emergency medical people. No Fear is another networks of practitioners that look at emergency medical system and critical care, and they were really functioning in good connections with many different research projects, writing, publishing different reports of lessons learned, which are best practices, which are available, publicly available. And they were also looking at interoperability needs and looking at issues related to send workshop agreement. I will pass this slide. I will simply stress that these projects, many of these projects, have decided to form clusters that are very, very effective, because the RTC, you know, it's about response technology. You see a certain number of acronyms, which are all of them are representing one project, where they really speak together and share information and try to build up synergies that are very effective. The CSTAC is about CBRN and interoperability, standardization. The same, we have a series of projects which are regularly meeting. And the social resilient cluster is also, there are more now than now, because here there are 8, I think. There are now 10 projects which are gathering. And I would like to say that they delivered a briefing material that were addressed to the policy makers, which in a way stimulated them in a way to write that through 9 or 10 projects, which they did. And the impact is quite impressive, because when you write policy recommendations written and adopted, endorsed by 10 projects, you have more than 120 organizations that are providing recommendations from the research, first responder, industry side, multi-actors, to a policy sector. And then they read it, I can assure you. If you receive 10 different briefing materials, you will not read these 10 briefing materials. So I really strongly value these clusters, and I hope that they will continue and be reinforced. Well, I would like to just say a few words about the current call. We have 6 topics which will be open in March 2024. One is dealing with improved disaster risk management and governance, and it's looking specifically on the prevention, detection, response, and mitigation of chemical, biological, and radiological threats to agricultural products, feed, and food processing. And this is quite important for us, because we had a project in the past which was called Plant Food Sec, which looked at this intentional degradation of food product, but it was never really covered by research. And we think that we need to look at these issues, because we cannot exclude the fact that intentional degradation will occur for agricultural food, and we know water product. By the way, we are speaking here about food security in terms of protection of the food resources or agricultural resources to malicious threats, criminal or terrorist attacks. So we are speaking about security. When the agricultural sector speaks about food security, it means the lack of resources. And it's the same for water. If you look at water security, very often it will be linked to water scarcity, while when we are speaking about water security, we are speaking about intentional degradation of the water resources, either from the upstream at the abstraction level, or wastewater treatment plant, or distribution network. So I just say that to you because I've seen a lot of confusion sometimes regarding the word security. So this is the first topic. The second topic is an open one. And it's we have decided to see what the community would propose regarding different situational awareness of risk by citizens, near to real case exercises involving citizens, involving municipal authorities, really focusing on interactions between citizen authorities and first and second responders in the event of natural or man-made disasters. We'll see what will happen because we don't really know what are the routes, because we are so diverse in terms of our approach to disasters, that we need really to give the chance to the different communities in the EU to also provide their own research gaps and needs. The third topic is dealing with harmonization and standardization, and here we want to have actually a say in the development of protocol for alert and impact forecasting of different type of natural hazards, whether climatic or geohazards, and in particular to test how we can gather existing information to derive actually some recommendations that could be used at EU level. I say here harmonized / standard because we are not sure that we can go up to the standardization, to the formal standardization, but certainly about harmonized procedure, that could be useful for the emergency teams and local regional authorities. I would like to stress that this topic is part of a coordination initiative between the European Space Agency and the EC on the Earth system science. So we want to really have a focus also of what the satellite technology can provide. The fourth topic is about NATEC, the natural technological disasters, typically a Fukushima type, and here it's about developing a holistic vision of crisis management after, geohazards, the regionally, or extreme climate events on critical assets. It can be infrastructure, industries, and to see how we can really derive also recommendations regarding the handling of this kind of cases in coordination again between the ESA and the Earth System Science. I forgot to say, but you will have this in the slide. I put the indicative budget. You have seen that in the first two or three topics, I put the indicative budget, and we will be funding 2 projects. Here it's 4 million and 1 project. There are eligibility conditions that have to be respected, and we try to have a links with CERIS, which is encouraged. It's not mandatory, but we think it's important to be considered. And here activities are requested to achieve a TRL 5 to 7 at the end of the project. And finally, I think it's the last one of 2024 for DRS. It's related to radiological and nuclear large-scale protection of population and infrastructure after a nuclear blast of nuclear facility incident. And here where we are really looking at the issue of how the protection of population needs to be undertaken in the perspective of such a blast of accident, and trying to see how would be the use of cost-effective technologies in protection of population of infrastructure. Here we are aiming to fund 1 project, and again we have a certain number of eligibility criteria with a TRL 6 to 8 by the end of a project, because it's a research and innovation action. Sorry, I thought it was an innovation action. So here, it's really focused on also events that we are fearing regarding Ukraine, and it's why cooperation with Ukraine will be encouraged in this project. Now, I would like to spend 2 or 3 minutes on the Community for European Research and Innovation for Security, which has been developing, as Alexis mentioned, since 2014. I initiated the community of users, which became, now I'm not in charge anymore because I'm in charge only of the DRS part, but it became this CERIS event, which is bringing together all stakeholders and activities under one umbrella. So we have different projects being considered, different networks, different actors, which are gathering in the framework of different type of events, conferences, matching the different thematic areas. And we try to also discuss the different gaps, research needs, different synergies among projects, testing, validation of project results, and so on, in an expert group on CERIS, which has been funded, which has been established last year, which is composed of 65 members, which will help the Commission to reissue an annual report. So now we are a little bit late for 2023, to 2023, but we are developing an annual report that will be focusing on the main findings of research in the past 2 years, and we will try to have a strong recommendations and conclusions about what research can say to policymakers, to first responders, to different stakeholders, industry, in the form of 40 pages report. It will be certainly, hopefully, released in spring, and it will be obviously publicly available. To be part of the CERIS community, you can all be part of the CERIS community. To subscribe to the newsletter, there is no obligation. You will get information on different type of events, different type of outcomes of events in the form of report, or video, whatever. To really share this knowledge, it's really a platform which is about creating links between different actors of many different disciplines. In the DRS area, I'm coordinating 2 main events in the next months. The first one is on CBRNE. It will be in the framework of an international conference in Strasbourg on the 21st of March. And we will have 2 days dealing with societal resilience and technologies for first responders in Brussels on the 6th and 7th of June 2024. That will be back-to-back to the Union Civil Protection Forum, which will be a very large exhibition area where we will also have a project being represented. So this is about the rest, and I would like to close this and happy to respond to any of your questions. Thank you very much. Back to you, Alexis.
Thank you, Philippe. It was a really interesting presentation, offering a lot of key points about the research programs, their structure, and I think the community that has been driving the research innovation on these topics. At EENA, we have been participating in this community for some years now, and we always see great spirit in the people participating, but also very useful discussions taking place. So we will now have some time for questions. Please feel free to add your questions to the chat box or the Q&A panel, and I will address them to Philippe. I don't see any questions yet, so perhaps, Philippe, I could ask you a question that I had in mind. I think you covered the different calls for proposals, which will be available in the running in this year. The deadline for these are in November.
November, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. So which means it gives good timing for anyone who wants to explore the opportunities which are available through these calls. I think also, Philippe, that the current work program includes topics and call for proposals until the end of this year. And is there a new work program expected, and are there any thematic revisions?
In fact, now we are preparing the work program 2025, which will be 1-year program. It's a kind of transition between 2 years program, because you know that the Horizon Europe is a 7 years program. So we had program of 2 years. Then this one is 2003-2004. We'll have one transitory program in 2025, and then 2 years work program 26-27. To terminate Horizon Europe. So now we are working on the work program 2025. I don't think it will be adopted before the end of the year. It will be certainly adopted by the end of the year, but published in March 2025. It will be. So I cannot say so much now because we are working on with the member states. We are exploring different orientations, but all the clusters are working on that and on this basis.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Philippe. I see a question in the chat about the presentation, and yes, it will be sent after the webinar is over and will be uploaded to the EENA website. The next comment is about the system being complicated, especially for those who are newcomers. I think there are many opportunities there covering different activities. So perhaps, Philippe, you can tell us a little bit about, for those who are not familiar with these programs, what could they do to become more familiar? Are there any events that are inviting people who are new to these activities? Are there any opportunities for what opportunities are there for people to find out more?
I hope I did not confuse everybody with my slides, because the slides, the first two slides are indeed very complex, and frankly, you don't need to master all the interactions with policy, industry, and so on to be part of the research projects or series, because here we are not actually expecting people to have a full coverage. I can tell you that in my case, it's always difficult. It's my job. It's always difficult to master all the different links. Here, what we are expecting from emergency the first responders is that they are having a stronger links with the scientific community and industry. And CERIS is a platform that will allow this, either participation online or in person, because there are events in different places, mainly in Brussels. But this is where actually different aspects of research are being presented, and where you can meet people who are engaged into research and meet in person also policymakers. For what is behind actually the support to policies, what the member states are doing, you are even the scientists are not engaged into that, and I try to help as much as I can, because the you are right, Christophe, that the system is complicated, but it is what it is. I tried to simplify it, but it is what it is. I try to help the project as much as I can to bring them into the people who will read their recommendations, which is very complex. And I agree that we are inventing an over complex society, actually, which is we could make it much simpler, but it's the way it goes. And when you are going into the national, I would say, decision making system, it will also be very complex between the different ministries, the different levels, local authorities, regional authorities. Every levels builds its own chapel, which is not easy. Um, Yeah, regarding Huberto, in fact, with the discussion with ESA is that they will complement with their own funds, the uncalled for proposal. They will consider the topics that will have published, and complement that with their own satellite, I would spatial technology development that will be supporting our topics. In a way, we'll be dealing with more harmonized issue, and try to have more, I would say, access to spatial information. And ESA will be complementing that with more technology development. So it will not be a coordinated action. So we are not engaged into a single call coordination. There will be two different mechanisms, but we will be building bridges among projects that will be funded under the different calls. It will be, I hope it will work, actually. I hope that we will have people that will be strengthening these links between these different sectors, because for the time being, at least in the US, there are not so much interaction with the spatial sector. So this is maybe a chance to become closer. And I had a call yesterday with a colleague from the cluster 4 from DEFIS, who asked whether the cluster 4 projects were present, and I said no, not for the time being. And I think that there is an opportunity for us to bring the spatial dimension more into the DRS part, which is not yet the case.
Perfect. Thank you, Philippe. I don't see any other questions. Perhaps I can ask one last question, and if in the meantime there are any more, please feel free to write them in the chat box. So, Philippe, in your experience, both as a researcher but also as a programming officer, what are the factors that can make a good proposal? Or, in other words, what would you recommend to those who are interested to participate?
Well, in many instances, you know, it's we have to understand that proposals are read by evaluators, and evaluators are looking their own evaluation criteria is a topic and the briefing that they get from the commission. So they read the topic and they will try to see as much what is the level of innovation of new ideas that is coming in proposals in the framework of what they read. If you are actually developing proposals which are clearly responding, not literally, but bringing actually your innovation ideas into this topic framework, this is already a good step, because in many instances, I've unfortunately seen fantastic ideas that were not corresponding exactly to the topic description. So this is already, you know, you can. So my first recommendation is read very carefully the topic text and try to stick as much as possible to what is being requested, and giving some very strong justification of every kind of actions that you are proposing. This is the first thing. The second thing is that there are some obvious need for multi-sectorial, multidisciplinary cooperation. This sector is such complex, so complex, that you need to ensure that you will have different categories of people being represented: the scientists, the different discipline, first responders being there, because it's very often in the eligibility criteria, and in many instances even the local regional authorities level. SME industry, if it corresponds to tools and technologies, and to anticipate the fact that when you have research that are being undertaken, initiated, you don't wait until the end of your project to address policy needs or market entries opportunities. This is very often the mistake that we see, is that in terms of the schedule, we see that it is going at the end of the project. Here we really want to see that the users, the developers, the innovators are working together in a regular way to arrive to maturation at the end of a project, not communicating to users at the very end of the project. So for me, this is also something which is important, and also good communication is obviously crucial. And what could I say? Obviously, the diversity of region is important. You know that people will also look at the gender balance and so on. All of this is embedded into the proposal description. We need to be good pupils when we write a proposal. You know, we have a kind of instruction, and we need to look at this instruction and delivers what the evaluators would like to see. And then after, indeed, there are some divergence, but at least this is something indispensable to get a high mark, I would say. I hope it's difficult. There is no recipe, Alexis.
Of course, there is no recipe. I really like the idea of the good student in the class. It always helps. Thank you, Philippe. I don't see any other questions. Perhaps before we close, I could take just a couple of minutes to remind you all about our upcoming webinars. So on the 20th of February, we have the webinar about unlocking funding opportunity through the European Space Agency program. And then on the 27th of February, we have a webinar of the PSAP Innovation Series, starting with the first episode with the Greater Copenhagen Fire Brigade. You can already register to these webinars on the EENA website, and we are looking forward to see you there. I think that's it. I don't see any other questions, so I believe we can now close the webinar. At this point, I would like to thank you, Philippe, for the very informative presentation describing the DRS topic, Horizon Europe, and CERIS.
You are welcome. It was my pleasure.
And I would also like to thank you all for participating and being here today. The recording of the webinar will be made available on the EENA website very soon. Wishing you all a very nice afternoon.
Bye-bye, Alexis. Thank you very much for your very nice coordination. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.